Hey, welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today we're going to start working on a project of two pieces of a column cover off of a Ford Foxbody Mustang. All right, so here are the pieces we're going to start with. Now this is just a two-piece. This is a column cover, mostly a top and a bottom. So you have a top, bottom. This is where your turn stock comes out, and of course the ignition in the edge. Now, in order to be able to vacuum bag this, I'm going to go ahead and take this apart so the screws are out of it. So you've got two halves. Now each half has some stipple grain here, so we need to sand this in order to get it to stick with some resin. I'll go ahead and hatch around the edge on the front and the back. That way I make sure I have good seal or good stick with the carbon after that. And again, we're going to do this on the bottom too. So we'll sand it. These holes, we'll go ahead and just make sure we have good hatching around them. And then we're going to get ready to clean it up and get it ready to vacuum bag it. Now the material we're going to use is the chopped carbon from Venom Carbon. Now this is just some of their sample that I have here. So again, this is going to be pretty awesome for a forged carbon. Really cool stuff. As it changes in the light, you can see kind of the flakes in it, and that's what's going to be really awesome when we get this done. So I'm going to set this aside. Let's go ahead and get these sanded up. We'll get them hatched and then cleaned and ready for resin to go on. All right, here are your both halves. Now they are sanded and ready to go. These have been washed. I'll just go ahead and wipe them with alcohol, let that kind of flash off, and then we're going to go ahead and get resin mixed up with some hardener, and then we'll get this applied and let it set up and cure and start to tack up before we put the carbon on. Okay, so here's a look at the pieces cleaned with the epoxy resin and hardener mix on them. Now I'm doing multiple pieces in here, so that's why you see the console piece, and you also see the dash around. So the next thing I need to do is I need to set up my vacuum sealer, because I'm going to try doing this in a vacuum sealing to make sure it sticks down. I'm going to go ahead and get that set up. I already have the bags pulled and everything together. All right, so here is part one of the column cover. So you can see it's got carbon all the way around. The vacuum's sealed down, and we're going to leave this for a day or two just till I get it done. But it pulled all the air out, so now you have basically good suction down, and it's going to hold that carbon in until it cures. So let's get part number two done. All right, so let's look at our two halves here of our column cover. So I obviously got one good seal on the bag, and this is days, maybe even a week more after. So this is still sealed up nice and tight. And then obviously this one I already cut open because I had a leak. So a couple things I'll show you with this one I made a mistake on, and we're going to show you how to fix it real quick. So the good one here, let's just go ahead and cut this open. Now this should easily pull off. Leaves the resin intact, stuck to the part, which is a good thing. Since the resin typically doesn't like stick to plastic, this is a very good choice. All the way around. Oh, I go there. There we go. All right, so there's our part. Now, got a little bit extra here of resin. I had a pleat in it. Pick that off. A little bit of carbon extra, so that can just be cut off easily. And what thing you'll find is that's got kind of the sparkly shine to it. I can just go ahead and take off some of this extra. There's no need to put resin on it, so just kind of snip that off a little bit. We'll start adding resin on the top, and then we're going to let it sit for a few days in between each layer, because my shop is pretty cold, and that way it'll go ahead and fix together. All right, so let's look at the part that failed. So one thing I did notice is that when I had this up like this, this plastic has a kind of a pleated side. This top side, you can see it, and then you can see there's a bottom side with no pleats. So one mistake I did make is that when I secured this all down, I actually put the pleated side against the part in the resin. That was a mistake, as you can kind of see in here, that on this initial layer, thankfully, this will cover, but you can see there's this little dimples in the part. Not a big deal because it's one of the initial parts itself, so we don't have to worry about it too much, but just know going forward that I cannot do that again, especially on these last few layers. This will be the extra, and then you'll have to sand it off. So just remember that the top layer, the non-pleated side, needs to go to the part. Now, one thing that I found, that these little parts are pokey here, and as it actually vacuumed down, what happened was the part poked through the bag. So obviously, like I said, I had the pleated side to this, so the bottom side here was poked through, and it needs to be sealed. So what I'm going to do is just take some packaging tape. Once I get all the carbon out, I'm just going to put some packaging tape across this. I'm going to go ahead and reseal this up because you can kind of see a little bit here didn't get great adhesion on some of the part. So I'm just going to go ahead and re-resin it as I do these other parts. Throw in some more carbon, put it back in here, and then make sure I put the part to the non-pleated or the clear side. I'm going to vacuum it down and leave it for a few more days. All right, so now we're going to leave this go ahead and set. This is the first top coat going on. You can start to see kind of that layered texture to it. Now, it's so cold in my shop. Right now, it's about 45 degrees in here. So this resin mixed up pretty well, but it's actually more of a gel versus a liquid. A lot of times it would be dripping off, but because it's so cold, it's going to go on more like a gel. So we're just going to let this sit for days now because it really will take a while to set. And then on the second piece, I again put the layered resin on. Tried to seal it, and again it punctured the bag, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it alone. I've sealed the bag, but it's not a perfect vacuum job. Otherwise, it's taped and ready to go, and this will sit again for days, and then we'll go ahead and cut it open, toss the bag because now it's 2 punctures, and we'll move on to a layer of top coat. All right, with round 2 now, we have it, I guess, cured, as you'd say. I'm going to cut this bag open. See how round 2 did for us. Again, it didn't really seal on the vacuum, but I think it held down pretty well. All right, so I showed you before that there was some dimpling on it, so this is definitely filled in with resin. You can see there's a little bit left there. So now I just really need to go through, kind of take off all these pointy bits, and then we just need to go through and go ahead and start getting the next layers on. So this stuff will come off. Again, probably wear some gloves. I'll stop messing with that. But you've got some pieces here that started to fill in good, and then you've got areas where some of that carbon didn't stick well. It wasn't there. So let's go ahead and mix up some resin, and then we can go ahead and start getting this top coat put on. Again, I'll probably put on about 4 on this. You can kind of see a difference between one to the other. This one has no top coat really. It's mostly just carbon. And then this one has 1 top coat. So you can kind of see a difference a little bit. At least I can on the camera, of the thickness between this to this. All right, so here's a look at our steering wheel cover, steering column surround on our Foxbody. Now, you have the 2 pieces here. To the left is the top, to the bottom is on the right. And I'll tell you, the one on the left is so much easier to work with because the vacuum bag actually held. The one on the right, I'll show you if I zoom in down here. You can see how choppy it is on the right, and all of that will fill in with resin, but by golly, it sure does make it difficult to work on. Now again, it's cold in here. It's probably about 50 degrees, so this is a lot more like a thin gel, if you will, rather than a true liquid. But as this fills in, you can kind of see it's warm enough that it's going to drip a little bit, which is good. Show you the other side. really pretty ugly. And we'll see how it goes, but this will all fill in with resin. It's just going to take time and work to get there. And just to show you in contrast, this is the upper piece. Now this is the bag that held grate and it held vacuum. You can see how well the carbon is actually laid down, the carbon flakes or the chopped carbon laid down. Much easier to deal with. It's still going to have a little bit of drip, but it's so much easier to deal with than that other stuff. There's one, there's two. Now we're going to let this sit. This is resin layer 2 on this piece, resin layer 1 on this piece. We're going to let this sit for a few days because it's only about 50 degrees in here, and that just needs time to set up to cure out, fully cure, and then we'll go ahead and add some more on top. All right, we're getting very close, or closer, to the end of the steering column cover carbon forge project. So I went ahead on the left-hand upper piece, I went ahead and go ahead and sand this down, and then I did put some clear coat on it just to kind of see what it would look like. Looks pretty good. I need to go ahead and sand that and give one more bit of resin on there. You can see just a teeny bit of dimples in it. Now if you look at the bottom, it's definitely needed at least one more round, but I've got some of it sanded, getting some of it prepared, some of the holes opened up so you can put screws back in it, and just one more round. Now one thing I found on the upper piece when I was sanding it is that it's been really cold in here. It's been down into the negatives at night, which means my shop without heat is probably running in the mid 40s, like 45, 46 degrees. Makes it extremely hard for this resin to cure properly. If I show you kind of here on the edge, you can see a little bit of pinholes and different things. So I'm going to go ahead and run a heater in here right now, get this shop up to about 70, do some resin work, and then I'll use a heat gun to kind of cure it out a little bit initially, and then I'll let it sit and let it get cool as it cures. And then we'll come back and see where we're at with the finished product. All right, here's going to be my finished product on the Foxbody steering column cover. Now I've got 2 screws holding it together, and I did actually have an old column here from a 92 car that I had previously, so I've got it just kind of sitting on there. But you can see it all fits together. Everything looks pretty good. If I had a steering wheel on there, it would look even better. So if I just kind of pan around here. Now this is sanded all the way through. Obviously I don't have a turn signal stalk in there or anything else, but it looked good behind a nice steering wheel. And that's going to be the end of this project. Now I think that's the 3rd or the 4th different carbon fiber project I have. I still have a Foxbody console, kind of the top piece I want to do, and I may have one Corvette piece I may try to do. I got an extra piece by happenstance, I guess, that I may go ahead and put into under carbon fiber. So that's it for this time. If you guys have any questions on anything throughout this, you can check the description down below. That has all the links to all the products I've used. Of course, I'm using sandpaper, basic water to sand. I've got the resin down there. I've got the carbon fiber. And then this is just some clear coat I had in here rather than a pure can of 2K clear coat, which is probably what I would recommend if you're going to do this for a kind of a keeper situation. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys enjoyed the product and the process of showing you how to do this. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. We'll see you next time.